Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Round 3 of the Gashimov Memorial Chess Tournament in honor of Vugar Gashimov, who passed away about a year and a half ago. Great guy from Azerbaijan, where the tournament's being played. This is a game between Wesley So, currently new with the Federation in U.S. Chess. Had kind of a crappy U.S. championship, but so far he's been playing pretty good. As white and Mickey Adams. Michael Adams from England is black. I like Mickey a lot. He's a cool guy. He's one of those guys, nothing phases him. Anyway, folks, let's get to it. It's going to be a Queen's Gambit declined. Wesley So is white and Mickey Adams is black. Pawn takes. Bishop, pawn. H6. Bishop goes back. We've all seen this a million times. Bishop D3. Last book move according to the computer. Pretty good advantage so far. I'm a little surprised for white so far. 2/3 of a pawn. That's a lot this early. F3. I think a lot of us will want knight to F3 instead. Then after knight to E4, bishop takes, queen takes. But they decided to go F3 instead. Castles for black. Queen to C2. B5. See that in the Queen's Gambit quite often. And one thing I don't like is when you do that. I don't like this backward pawn here. Knight comes up. Knight A3 to stop the pawn from going to B4. A5. Castles. Bishop D7. So that's the drawback. You can't fee and kettle the bishop because of the pawn. Knight to C1. Interesting move there. Computer liked A4, which I do as well. Queen to C1. We decided to go knight to C1 instead. Interesting move by Wesley. And that basically brought it an even game to about a little bit advantage for black, not much of one. Knight to C4. Threatening the E3 pawn. Rook D1 defending. Bishop E6. They moved that bishop twice now. I'm not so keen on that either. Knight to D7. Back a small advantage for white. This is just interesting maneuvering. Of course, you can see that it's a discovered attack against the bishop, so he goes back to F2. Good spot for that, though. Extra reinforcement on the E3 pawn. Now, I'm not familiar with this position at all. It's got a 1/3 of a pawn advantage for white on the computer, a little bit less. But I like all the space that black has on the queen side. And it seems that's where all the action is right now. This knight's in a really good spot. Can't be chased off, at least for now. Rook to C8. He's looking to push the C pawn. Rook A to D1. And queen to C7. Okay. It looks like black really wants to go when he gets a chance anyway. C5. But he's got to be able to keep track of his B5 pawn. H3. Interesting though, the computer calls for E4, and I kind of like that myself. Bishop G3 hitting the queen. But after H3, for So, Rook F D8. Now F4. I'm not so sure. Not that I'm second guessing Wesley So. He's 100 times better player than I, but A4 and E4. I still like E4. After F4, it's just you give up E4 square, and this pawn is backwards. A4. And he goes F5. Okay, it's an interesting trade here. Pawn takes, queen takes, bishop takes, bishop takes. It's just a weird trade of minor pieces. Tiny advantage for black. I think black's come a long ways in the last 4 or 5 moves. White's got the bishop pair though. Rook B8. Queen to C2. Get the queen right off the B file. before he starts pushing. B4, here he goes. A takes, bishop takes, pinning that knight. So what to do, what to do? Computer likes rook B1, rook E2, bishop H4. Wesley decides rook to E2, get that pin right out. Queen A5. Now he goes bishop to H4 to chase the rook. Instead he goes F6 to block. Okay. Let's see how it goes here. Knight A4. And this is a move I didn't see. It's a second choice in the computer. A fairly close second. Knight to D6 is what the computer's looking at, which I kind of agree. Knight, chase the bishop, and knight can come back here when it needs to. Knight F8, interesting choice. Bishop to D3 to hit the knight, threatening bishop takes, winning that pawn, but you can't because the queen's babysitting the knight. So knight goes to B6, knight goes back to C3, C5. Finally, black gets his C5 move in after all this time. Small advantage for white, but I think Mickey's holding his own. They're both rated well over 2,700, so this is world-class. These are world-class players. You don't expect a blowout. Pawn takes, bishop takes, king H1. Get that king right off of this diagonal. Period. Rook comes over. Getting a little dicey with that rook on the same file with the queen. Bishop F5 to hit the rook. Rook goes to C6. E4 for Wesley. Instead of taking, bishop B4 is the computer move, or D4. I kind of like D4 because it shows that pawn down his throat. I mean that in a bad sense, but it makes it difficult for him. Bishop B4, E5. Try to bust up his king side a little bit. Actually, interesting might have been bishop F2. And after bishop takes, pawn takes, rook up. That's an interesting position with a pretty good advantage for white. Pawn and a half. After E5, bishop E7. Trying to keep his pawns intact. Because the fear is pawn takes, pawn has to take, and these two pawns here are isolated. Queen to B3. And this is where Mickey, I think, I don't know if he was in time trouble around move 36. Kind of stumbles here. Computer likes king H8 just to get him off the diagonal with the queen. Or knight C4, one of the two. Those are the two moves the computer likes. He goes queen to C5, and bang, just like that. It's an over 3-point advantage now for white. Pawn takes, bishop takes. Taking when the rook doesn't really help, because after bishop takes, you're still doomed. But after bishop takes, knight to E4, you can see why I can't take, because the rook on D8's hanging. Queen has to move. Knight takes check. Pawn takes. Queen to G3 check. Here it comes. King to F7. Poor Mickey's doomed. Double up the rooks. Threatening mate. Queen has to come over. Rook to E7. Queen has to take. Rook takes. King takes. Queen G7 check. King has to go to E8. And bishop to G4. And that's where Mickey Adams from England throws in the towel. Resigns. Give you an idea. After the bishop move, rook has to come up. Bishop checks. Knight has to block. Queen takes. Bishop. It's over. You're basically a piece up. The two rooks and the queen, and you have two minor pieces against the knight. Oh well, tough break for Mickey Adams. Interesting game. I thought he really played well, and it was, it's the most you can hope for with Black against the world-class players that have an even position at the end, but he just slipped. I moved 35-36. Tough break, Mickey. Anyway, folks, I want you to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.